Yo, they try to make the monk tier sets look as troll as possible every single tier.
Dude. Oh, dude. I actually think some of the recolors of that monk set look cool, but the first one they showed, wow, that thing looks dorky.
This one looks ridiculous. I actually like the purple one. I think this looks not too bad. Okay, so Blizzard announced all of the tier set bonuses coming in 10.1. A lot of them are available for testing on the 10.1 PTR, which went up as well this week. Not all of them, but I think most of them are available for testing, so you can go test out your own tier set bonus. And today we wanted to talk about just a couple of things surrounding the tier set bonuses. We're not going to be going in depth with like the specifics of like every single tier set, but we're more going to be talking about tier sets just as a whole. I think that the Wowhead class guide writers are supposed to release something in the next couple of days going in depth on very specific class bonuses, but we wanted to just kind of take a stab at like the overarching, did Blizzard succeed with class tier sets? What do tier sets look like in the future? That kind of thing. So where do you want to start with this, Dratnos?
Well, I guess with the tier sets, there has been quite a few specs that are a little bit less excited about their upcoming set bonus. There are also quite a few very powerful and very cool ones here.
Yeah. What are some of the powerful ones we can highlight real quick? You think?
So for instance, like Holy Priest looks like a pretty bonkers one for raid. So a couple of the tank ones are quite good as well.
The Bear Druid.
Some of the rogue ones look good too. Yeah, Bear Druid looks pretty good. Yeah, then and there's some good lines of text as well, such as the gain Stormkeeper every 40 seconds line and the Elemental Shaman set bonus.
Dude.
That being said, there's also a few that are like the enhancement one that the spec communities are a little bit less excited about how that they'll interact with the kit. There are a few that either force you into certain gameplay lines, force you into certain talent builds, or not force, but do reward heavily certain talent builds. And it seems like in general, there aren't very many that function in a way where they really change your gameplay so much as like give you a bunch of damage and
sure,
maybe like buff certain parts of your kit, but don't really change like the flow of your rotation. It looks like many of these aren't.
Yeah, and when we say many of them, it seems like it's actually not even. It seems like it's somewhere around the order of like half, even in some situations where they're either bland or anti-synergistic in some way. Blizzard did release a part of the blue post announcing all the set bonus. They did release this blurb that says set armor bonuses in season 1 had relatively low impact on gameplay and rotations. Because of this, we wanted to give the new talent system room to shine. And the new tier set bonuses can have more impact on your resources, cooldowns, and talents. Some bonuses are enhanced by playing certain talents, and some build on popular talents in the middle sections of trees. Throughout these designs, we intend for players to feel able to play the overall build or strategy they prefer. I think this is actually a very interesting thing that they stated in this blue post just in general, basically saying that we previously weren't going to force you into a specific build, but now we are looking to put you at least in some talents in some situations that are at least in the middle of the tree. So they're trying to compromise. They're going to push you towards a certain build in some ways, but I do question whether or not that's actually true with what they have delivered tier set wise.
It depends on the set bonus. So like if we look at this Blood Decay set bonus, for instance, this Blood Decay bonus does some cool stuff, right? It's like, oh, hey, look, there's some Vamp Blood stuff. Maybe now you're more interested in taking, there's like a little bit of a Vamp Blood sub theme at the bottom right of the tree. Maybe you take that now, even if you weren't before, and maybe this powers it up. Maybe it adds some gameplay around that. Although you could still play just without it and get value out of the set as is. So I think there are some set bonuses that are accomplishing this pretty well, but there are a few that are otherwise, I'd say, a little bit more not like that. There's the Destro set, the Channel Demon Fire one.
I was scrolling.
Yeah, that one. I think there's also cool stuff because Channel Demon Fire is like this is not a button that Destro locks talent currently, right?
Correct.
And so the problem with it is that it's not if you're a spec and you get a set bonus that's around a talent you don't currently talent, it's like, oh no, right? Like there's great danger of this set bonus just being underpowered or not worth or being a smaller percent gain than other ones. But I think that in general, that's a cool way. Like if there are talents like Channel Demon Fire, I think that making set bonuses around them, just as long as it's well tuned, if it makes you play something new for a tier, as long as it's like a fun build. One
Yeah.
of the problems is sometimes the talents that aren't picked are also like not fun builds, and if you power up that talent enough to just brute force make you take it, it makes the spec like lose some of the parts that were fun about it.
I think this is a noble idea. I actually do think that like
Yeah.
enhancing certain talents, this is a way that tier sets should change up the builds that you're playing every single tier. I think that, at least in my opinion, it would be particularly bland if you were playing the same build every single tier and we didn't have these tier set bonuses that at least impacted your kit in some way. Now, it seems like the approach that they've made is maybe a little bit... I want to say they're not heavy-handed enough in some of the situations, right? Where I think that if they're looking to enhance builds by playing certain talents, they should be a little bit more in line with every single spec in the game. And I think that it should be... I don't want to say something that where it's like completely polarizing, like if you're in a spot where it's like you're playing a build that's not fun. I don't want it to be like that, but I do think it should at least enhance your gameplay experience and maybe look to force you to take a talent in some situations. There are some talents that you can just forego talenting altogether, like the Channel Demon Fire one. That's just something that you don't take, and it is close to the middle of the tree, but it's like not in the dead center. There was also something that Morgan Day stated in his interview with you last week, talking about like mostly kind of the same thing, right? Where they want to be intentional with how much complexity they're adding with the new talent system, and they want to be careful about a set's ability to impact talent builds. But they also wanted to kind of dial it up a notch from the current tier. How are you feeling about this now?
Right. So again, like there's gonna be some best builds.
Of course,
every
there
patch,
always
right,
are.
for
Yeah.
most fights, and some like it's fine if the talents or if the set bonuses change the best builds, right? Like the thing they want is they don't want you to feel like your previous build is no longer viable, right? It's no longer like functional
Mhm.
because the set bonus is like so much pushing towards a certain build. And I think that like when you hear something like that, like obviously it's not going to apply if you're min maxing, right? Because if you're min maxing, you're just always gonna play the best build, right? It doesn't matter to you if it's the best build by 3%, 5%, or 10%, right? But it does matter to them, right? It does matter to Blizzard to make sure that they are keeping the other talent builds, competitive, right? Keeping it so that people playing that aren't getting just aren't doing half damage or whatever this tier as a result. So um I don't know. I think that's the sort of thing that, especially when you're a player like you or me, that's always gonna try and play the best build, right? Like that's not something that is as important for our gameplay.
I agree with that.
It's very important for like the people that most people playing a spec to be able to keep playing a favorite build if they have one.
I do kind of expect a couple of these to be reworked still. Like they've been.
I don't think they all have to do the same. They have to interact in the same level each tier with talents, right? Like I think it's fine if some specs are getting generically fun ones, some specs are getting... I mean, I think it's normal as well that some specs are going to get kind of boring ones, but obviously this is the point in testing where we identify all the kind of boring ones and hope that they all get changed. But it's normal for some to kind of sneak through and just be kind of boring. But at this point, we hope that all those get changed, and then I think it's fine if some are like hyper focused on existing talents that aren't taken. Some make cool synergies with existing talents that were taken most of the time and will now be taken all the time. And some are just generically good.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that something that people actually kind of get worried about is like about tuning. More often than not, it's not even about like how good tier sets are relative to one another. It's like how well the specs are balanced versus one another, and that does... I mean, tier is involved in that in that consideration, but in reality, tier isn't the only thing to consider. Okay, so I think that one of the last topics we've actually seen a couple of times from the community, and I saw this tweet from Yoda, and I think I just wanted to highlight it so you and I can kind of talk about it, kind of give our general thoughts. And it reads, "Hot take: with the new talent system, tier sets are unnecessary." I think that we can tackle that in the first blurb, and then in the second thing he says, "And just another way for the loot council to decide your character's power level. It would enrich your gameplay more to just add a talent point every single tier." And we can talk about these two things as separate. Tackling first, are tier sets unnecessary? In my opinion, as somebody who played, with and without tier sets, I remember whenever they removed them, I much prefer tier sets as they currently stand. I do think that Blizzard can have tier sets interact a little bit better with talents. I think that that's something that you and I were talking about. They may be able to, and they may be in just like a weird spot where they're not fully on board with exactly what they want to do, just all the developers, everything like that. I think that will come with time, but I do think that tier sets are good for the game, and I generally believe that because I think that changing your talent build every single tier or in between tiers is actually kind of important, and I think that without tier sets, classes were taking the exact same talents for like an entire expansion, and that felt wrong to me. In addition to that, there's like I think it doesn't. I actually do generally think it enriches your gaming experience by having those tier set bonuses, and it does change your build a little bit outside of just Blizzard's specific tuning.
Yeah, I think that I think set bonuses are good as well. I do think that, I mean, obviously, like he's proposing getting a talent point, which would also count as changing your talents. Although,
Of course,
I think if you look at the different talent trees that different specs have, there are a lot of specs that are balanced carefully around not having that 31st talent point or whatever on their spec side.
yeah.
And then there are a lot that aren't, and that would just get like an extra utility piece. But there are some spec trees that hugely rely on like not being able to get all 3 capstones and would be able to with that point. So I do think that's something where if they were to move to that, that would require like a lot of rebalance and rethinking. Also, like the longevity of the talent system, I think, kind of relies on them not just like blasting us with talent points mid expansion. If they do want the system to like be something that they can build and expand on for the next few expansions instead of having to throw it away because it's overloaded with us. Like if we come out of this expansion using 50 talent points, right? They have a lot less room to go upwards than if we come out of this expansion using 30.
They've also had a pretty strong willingness to either rework or rebalance talents that they see are either completely underperforming, not being taken, or just not interacting with the kit in the way that players want it to. And that's actually something that I have to give Blizzard credit for. It's like it makes a lot of sense. We've even seen like complete talent reworks from things like, you know, the Druid class. We've seen Paladins are set for a pretty steep rework come 10.0.7. Shadow Priest is on the docket for 10.1 as a pretty strong rework as well. Those kind of things, like Blizzard has proven that they are also willing to change up talents that are either not seeing play or just specs that aren't interacting with their talent tree in a super positive way. And I think that's something that is also positive with this. That I also kind of agree with you. I don't think that the additional talent point is something that would be great. I think it would maybe be fun if you had access to all of your capstones, but I think it would, the 31st to the 32nd point in the spec tree could be a big deal, or it could just be a nothing kind of situation.
Yeah, and I worry that it does kind of cannibalize from the future of what fun could come in the future to just like give you, like if you got access to your full talent tree, right? Like if you could just take every talent point, right? Where do you go from there?
Oh yeah, I don't like that idea either.
I do sympathize with the loot council deciding your fate thing, and I think that's an unfortunate part of the way that tier interacts, especially in this world where the catalyst doesn't come out for a super long time, especially if you're somebody who primarily is interested in like Mythic Plus rather than Raid. If you're somebody who's like, you know, say you're in a Mythic raiding guild, but you're one of the like 5 people that's probably going to be on the bench for the last boss, not one of the 20 people that's going to be in, right? Like you're just sitting there without tier and getting the hand-me-down normal tier like 3 weeks in or something like that, right? And it's a lot less fun, and you're kind of seeing people play with their new toys and not getting them yourself. So,
well,
but I think that's a problem with like tier acquisition rather than with the concept of like each class getting a new bonus each patch. I think each class getting a new bonus each patch is a really good way to make the game feel different each patch. I do think they don't have to have that for the game to feel different and fun each patch. Like I think corruption as a system succeeded at kind of accomplishing that without needing to actually be set bonuses, although corruption came with a whole host of arguably worse acquisition problems at launch. So
I guess this isn't something that we talked about starting the video, but like, how have you felt about the borrowed power of this expansion? So coming in this expansion, they kind of wanted to cut all of the borrowed power out of the game, and I think that like one of the only things that was left were arguably tier sets. And now we are getting the Annulet in 10.0.7, but that doesn't seem like that's going to stay around for a long time. There's also questions of like how strong the Annulet really is, but that's not for this video. I think it's actually been very interesting what they've done with like the absence of borrowed power for classes and for specializations outside of tier, and I think that completely removing that wouldn't be great. Like what has your read been? Are you kind of the same thoughts?
I think the borrowed power discussion was like, the problem was never borrowed power as a concept, and Blizzard smartly said, okay, we're gonna tone down on borrowed power because they did like an expansion with, you know, 5 painful borrowed power systems like conduits, and
it was all expansion
charge
wide
domination and yeah, all these systems that were like, they were bad systems, but the the borrowed power nature of it is just like stuff you're going to have for one patch that you don't keep for the rest of the expansion, or stuff that you're going to have for the rest of an expansion that you don't keep till next expansion, right?
Yeah.
Like, tier sets are that, trinkets are that, any talents that Blizzard reworks are basically that as well, right? Onyx Amulet's going to be that too.
Wow.
Any
Good
special
point.
weapon effects, any very rare items, right? All of those things are borrowed power, right? So it's not like they did away with borrowed power. They just didn't make any, awful systems that happened to be borrowed power, but also just were awful, right? And that's obviously really good. But I don't know. I think that there's certainly room for them to make good borrowed power systems again if they have a good idea for one in the future. Just, it needs to be good, not bad. I don't know. Sounds very simple when you put it like that, but I think that was just the problem with it. It was never the fact that conduits and shards were borrowed power. It was the fact that they sucked.
Those definitely were bad, and then I think that tier sets are, some of the tier sets could be
not
better.
Without other problems.
Yeah, of course.
Like
the acquisition, I think, is the biggest issue for tier.
They are still keeping the revival catalyst at its same cadence. There is a little bit of a buff to how much good tier you can get with the upgrade system, because now normal and heroic grade are dropping higher itemable tier effectively, because you upgrade it all the way up to 437, which is the equivalent to 411 right now. So that is actually kind of a big upgrade to the tier you can get. You can also upgrade LFR tier all the way up to high normal eye level. So it will, in theory, be easier to chase down an upgrade tier, especially if you're in a position to do like normal splits, LFR splits, anything like that, which obviously the average player has no interest in doing.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
It is something that it has gotten more powerful this patch, which
we'll see.
It's kind of weird.
We'll see how it fares, like just as players go on. I guess to close out the video, we'll list at least one tier set that we're excited for. For me, I'm excited about the Demonology Warlock tier set. I think that this Grimoire Felguard stuff that they're doing is kind of cool. What's something that you're excited for? Name one.
I think that I was initially very excited about the DH tier set. I haven't played with it yet. I've played with the Bear one.
Venge or Havoc?
Vengeance, the tank DH one. It looked kind of cool. It looked interesting. It looked like it maybe had some cool gameplay.
Okay.
To really min-max it. So that's like the Fiery Brand stuff. So I feel like that one's kind of cool looking. I don't know if it's any good. I haven't theory crafted it or played with it. I've only played with the Bear one. I can confirm the Bear one does a lot of healing. So yeah, those are some good ones.
Cool. All right. What is your guys' favorite tier set? Do you guys think that tier sets should stay? Are you happy with the relative power of tier? I mean, I think that's something that we talked about for a little bit. Do you think that Blizzard needs to be maybe even more aggressive with how strong tier is? Not necessarily from a numerical perspective, but how they interact with kits, that kind of stuff. We're interested in hearing your thoughts down in the comment section below, and we will see you guys in next week's video. Goodbye.